Alright, y'all, so today is Thursday, January 6th. It's about 9 a.m. and today I'm doing my hospice calls. Today our schedule looks a little different because of these, but I wanted to show you guys a little bit behind the scenes. I did a poll on Instagram and you guys, everybody that answered said they wanted a little bit more info on my hospice volunteer work. So that's what we're going to do today. I have a couple of clips that I'm going to throw into this video as well from the last 2 weeks of me doing calls. First, I need to get this cleaned up and then make my coffee because I haven't had coffee yet. And then we will get my forms ready and I will kind of go over all of that before I get started on my calls. All right, so over here is where I keep all of my forms and stuff for the hospice. So I'm just going to grab all of this, move it over here, and then I'm gonna grab a pen. And my email hasn't come in yet with my call list, so I'm just waiting on that. But I'm going to go ahead and set the camera up on the tripod, and I'm going to go ahead and set you guys up on the tripod and get some of these out for me so that I know I have everything that I need, and wait for my email. All right, so I got my list printed off. I've got my forms here, and what I'm doing now is putting the patient's name, and I'm signing and dating all of the forms first because I figured that the first week I did fill this out all at once when I was making the call, and then last week I did it filling out the patient's name and signing it first, and then I went through and made my call and filled the rest of it out, and it went quicker. So that's what I'm going to do now, and then I will start making my calls. All right, so I'm just cutting in here really quick to just talk to you guys a little bit. When I'm doing my calls, I have three piles that I keep. The one on the desk is the calls that I still have to make. Actually, technically, I have 4 piles. The calls I still have to make. Over here on the floor, I have ones that I've left messages for. Back there is a pile on that table where I need to report anything back to the office. And then down there on the floor over there is a pile that everything is good, no reports to send back, nothing to report back to the office, pretty much. So that is what my desk is looking like right now. I can't show you anything for privacy reasons, but there's one pile, there's one pile, there's one pile, and then there's my other pile back there. So yeah, that's kind of what my day looks like on Thursday mornings. And I'm usually done around 1 o'clock. Just depends on how many calls I have to make and how many people pick up and I talk to and how long I talk to them. So there's that. Now let me get back to these calls. All right, I'm finishing up my reports right now. The reports are pretty much where I just send in if the patient had complaints or needs or anything that they wanted me to relay over to their team. So that's what I'm doing right now. And then once I'm done with this, the only thing I'll have to do after this is if I get a call back once I've completed all this, I will have to report anything that I get from callbacks because I've left a message with a good amount of people today, and some of them call me back, some don't, which is fine. So if any of them do call back, I will fill out their form and then report that back to the office. All right, so I kind of wanted to, while I'm doing my calls and kind of waiting on callbacks, I wanted to kind of fill you in on where I started with my degree plan and kind of where I started and where I'm at now. Because when I first started this in 2015, I wanted to work with domestic abuse victims. That's kind of where I started this whole program at. I applied for the Associates of Human Service, got accepted, went through the program. The last semester before you graduate, you have to do an internship, or one of the last 2 semesters, you have to do an internship. I knew this the entire time. I was okay with that. I know that I learn better hands-on, so doing this internship would help me more than sitting in a class reading textbooks would, and I was okay with that. My program, all my classes went great. Let's fast forward to the last semester of my associate's program where I had to do my internship. I remember applying to 6 different agencies. I applied to 2 domestic abuse, a hospice, the child welfare, and 2 other places that I can't remember right now. And I waited and waited, and the only one to get back to me was hospice. I became very anxious because I didn't know how I would be able to handle it. Hospice isn't for everyone, much like all other jobs that you can go into. It's not for everyone. And it's a very hard but very rewarding field. So when I obviously accepted the internship because I needed an internship to graduate. So when my first couple of days in were easy, I had a tour of the office, I met everybody. I followed the social worker first, and the social worker was also the volunteer coordinator at this particular hospice agency. So I kind of shadowed her on a couple of days, kind of seeing what she does, how she, interacts with patients, how often she interacts with patients, and just get an idea of what the social worker does. I followed or shadowed the chaplain next, and we visited a couple people. I followed him. We were together for 2 days, I think, and we met within those 2 days, we met with 5 patients, and I got to see how he interacted with the patients and how his day-to-day, looked. And after that, I shadowed the nurse for 1 day. Got to see, what they do, what their day looks like. Obviously, I'm not in nursing school, so it didn't really apply to me, but I still wanted to see, how they interact with the patients, how they help, how they learn how they talk to the patients to kind of get a better understanding of how the whole picture looks. And then I followed the CNA and home health aide for a day each and did the same thing with them. And then I spent the rest of the time shadowing the social worker. And the end of the second week into my internship, I went with her to an intake meeting, and I sat there as the nurse and the social worker. The agency that I was interning with during the intake meeting, it was the social worker and the nurse that would meet with the patient and their spouse, their family, whoever wanted to sit in on this meeting as well. And they would just learn about the patient, what their diagnosis was, their medical history, their family history, their religious background if they had one, funeral plans if they had made any at that point, whether or not they had a DNR, kind of just trying to figure out how to create a plan that would benefit this patient to the best of their ability. So I was sitting there, and again, I didn't really talk to the patient. I just sat there and kind of witnessed the interaction between the social worker and the family, the social worker and the patient, the nurse and the patient, nurse and the family. And the patient starts talking about how he was recently diagnosed with this disease, and he didn't know if he was nervous, if he was angry, if he was sad, if he was anxious. He didn't know kind of how he felt yet. He wasn't able to process his emotions at that point. So he asked kind of for help. He asked for help on how to process his emotions and kind of work his way through the different stages of grief and the emotional impact that has on life. Out of nowhere, I get this like overwhelming feeling that this is where you're supposed to be. These are the people that you're supposed to be helping. That moment forward, I really put my all into my internship. I focused more on the jobs and what they did, how they spoke to the patients, how they spoke to family, the dialogue that was passed back and forth during phone calls or interactions with the family or the patient, trying to learn as much as I can, because I learn better. I learn better in a hands-on environment. I already applied for my bachelor's of human services at that point and was accepted. So I moved forward with that degree. I finished it. And then I told myself I'm done with school. I'm going to take a break and then figure out my master's program. I had just had our third child when I graduated with my first bachelor's. And, I told myself I need to take a break. I need to just focus on myself and the kids and my family and move forward when I'm in a better spot to do so. And the reason I didn't jump into my master's program is because with a newborn and homeschooling and everything else that life throws at you, I didn't feel that I could commit to a master's program, because the Master's of Social Work is much like a nursing program schedule. You do 1 day of classes and then 3 or 4 days of internship. So I would be gone from the house most of the day, 5 days a week. And with a newborn, 2 other kids that I'm homeschooling, I just didn't feel like I could commit to that and give it my all. So I decided to go back for my Bachelor's of Social Work. I am currently after this semester, I will have 9 classes left to finish my degree. And at that point, I will decide whether or not I want to move forward with my master's degree. But if I do, if I do decide to move forward, it'll be after our youngest is older. She is currently 3, and while she doesn't require as much as she did when she was a newborn, I just want to spend this time with the girls and, making new memories and all that kind of stuff. So the master's degree right now will happen at a later time if I decide to go forth with that. But that's kind of where I started, where I'm at now, how hospice kind of played a role in my decision to move forward in the hospice field. And you know, it's crazy. If you would have asked me a few years ago if I'd be working in hospice, I would have looked at you like you were insane and been like, absolutely not. And I get asked all the time, like, why hospice? You're very emotional. You are very emotional. You can't even handle a Hallmark movie without crying. How are you going to handle working with patients during their end of life care, or, you know, the bereavement process for the family afterwards? Like, how are you going to handle that? My answer to them is, I don't know. I still don't know. I somehow so far have been able to set all of that aside and just be there. Obviously, I haven't been a like emotional support in terms of like a social worker or counseling and stuff like that yet. So that'll be another bridge that I will cross when I get there. But I have full faith that I'll be able to do it, that this is where I'm meant to be. So that's kind of how my degree that's how all of that changed. And that's where I am today. Alright guys, that's it for this video. I hope I kind of answered some of the questions of behind the scenes of what I do with hospice. If you have anything else you want to ask, you can leave it in the comments and I will answer it to the best of my ability. But I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope I answered your questions. Remember to comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys.